Today we're gonna do a Costco croissant hack video. So I'm gonna show you how to make 5 different hacks with Costco croissants and basically how you can upgrade and up-level your day-old croissants. I originally posted this video as a short form piece on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, as well as Instagram, and it blew up. And not for the reason you're thinking. It did not blow up because people wanted the recipe. It actually blew up because people wanted to roast me about how they don't have leftover Costco croissants. In the video, I mentioned something along the lines of this is a perfect way to use your leftover croissants, and people disagreed because exhibit A, B, C, D, E, F, G, everyone said they did not have leftover croissants. I typically have leftover croissants, so I thought this would be the perfect video to show you how I like to upgrade and up-level my croissants. You can really upgrade these croissants and make them look like something straight out of a pastry case. So the recipes I'm going to show you today are how to make an almond croissant, a matcha croissant, a chocolate raspberry croissant, a creme brulee croissant, and a lemon meringue croissant. And if you guys want the full recipes to all of these beautiful twice-baked croissants, head over to my Patreon, which I just launched, and I will be sharing all of the full recipes on there. So first, let's talk about croissants, obviously the most essential item within this recipe hack. For my video, I'm doing about 10 croissants, but feel free to get whatever number of croissants best suits you. If you head over to Costco like I did, I waddled my butt over to Costco on a Wednesday evening right before they closed in order to snatch a box of these croissants. Honestly, I think they're the best deal. Pretty much all of the croissant recipes we're covering today are going to be twice-baked croissants. So this means you'll need day-old croissants, either from Costco or another brand, and you'll basically take them, let them dry out after cutting them in half before you kind of embark on this journey. So step number 1 after you get your croissants is to actually prepare a simple syrup. This simple syrup will be used across the board for all the croissants. It'll kind of help moisten it and bring it back to life, especially if you're using day-old croissants. The way to make simple syrup is of course super simple. You just have to combine water and sugar. You'll melt that down in a saucepan and then you'll set it aside. Now let's talk about the first recipe, which we're gonna do a twice-baked almond croissant. I feel like this is a classic bakery item. You can find this at a lot of different pastry shops, and honestly, an almond croissant is just so satisfying, and it's super simple to make at home. The almond croissant is going to have frangipane in the middle as well as the top, and frangipane is this sort of smooth almond paste made with almond flour, and it really gives it that nice almond filling. And then we're also going to smooth a thin layer of the frangipane on top and sprinkle on some sliced almonds. It really gives it that nice texture and crunch. The last thing we'll do is put on some powdered sugar. So the first step to make these almond croissants is that you will want to brush each of the croissants with a layer of simple syrup. This will help add some of that moisture back into these day-old croissants. Now I've pre-prepared some frangipane, which we will put in the filling as well as the top of these croissants. I've left the instructions and recipe on how to make frangipane in my Patreon post, so definitely don't forget to check it out. Once you've added an even layer of frangipane in the middle of each croissant, go ahead and sandwich it and then smother some frangipane on top. This will help us adhere the sliced almonds. Sprinkle on the sliced almonds on top of each croissant. It produces a beautiful crunchy texture once toasted. Now these almond croissants are ready to go into the oven. They'll bake for somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes, and once they've emerged and cooled down, you can dust them off with powdered sugar. And the sprinkle of powdered sugar is a nice and beautiful touch that always just reminds me of fresh powdered snow. So with all of these croissants, I actually cut them in half because I think it'll be easier for me to get to the meat and the center filling of the croissants. And also, I can't eat 5 straight croissants in a row, so we're gonna eat half. So let's take a bite into the almond croissant. This one is classic for a reason. You know it's a good time when your pants are literally covered in crumbs. Really good. Honestly, I feel like these croissants are even more flaky than they are when you first buy them, because when you put them in the oven, they get nice and crispy, and it's the perfect texture with all the layers. I love this one because it's got that crunch of the sliced almonds on top, and the frangipane is this sort of like nice almondy, nutty filling. This one is a classic for a reason, and I feel like you can't go wrong. So next up, we've got the matcha croissant. I am actually trying to draw all of my croissants on my iPad, but I am not an illustrator by any means, so if this drawing looks atrocious, I apologize in advance. Now, what's in the matcha croissant, you ask? The matcha croissant actually has matcha frangipane in the middle, and then on the outside, it's dipped in a matcha white chocolate shell and dusted with, once again, more matcha powder. This is truly matcha on matcha on matcha, and I absolutely love that. Alrighty, let's get into the matcha croissants. First thing we're gonna do is take some matcha powder and add it into about 1/4 cup of frangipane. Fold that together with a spatula until it all comes together. Now, very similar to what we did for the almond croissant, we will add a thin layer of frangipane in the center of each croissant. We'll bake it off and then focus in on the white chocolate matcha drizzle. I'm using these white chocolate wafers from Ghirardelli's. They melt super easily in the microwave, and then I add some matcha powder to get that bright, vibrant green color. Using a spatula, you'll spread a thin layer of the matcha chocolate on half of the croissant. I feel like this gives it more of an artsy approach. And then to just really lock in that matcha, I am taking some more matcha powder and sifting it over the white chocolate portion. And that is a wrap on the matcha croissant. It's time for a matcha croissant taste test now. There's literally crumbs in my microphone. Matcha is truly fantastic. It's got this burst of matcha flavor the minute you bite into it, but it's also complemented by the matcha white chocolate shell on the outside. Literally, this one has matcha everywhere in this croissant, so if you're a matcha lover, this one is perfect for you. We're about to tackle the third recipe, which is chocolate raspberry. I personally was inspired by the Ghirardelli chocolate raspberry squares. If you've ever had them, you know. They're basically dark chocolate on the outside and this gooey raspberry jam in the middle, and I absolutely love them. And I just love the pairing of raspberry, which is a little bit tart, with the sweetness of chocolate. So this one is going to be a chocolate raspberry croissant, and it is going to have in the middle some raspberry jam as well as chocolate chunks, and then it's topped in a layer of thin chocolate and dusted with freeze-dried raspberry powder. I know, it sounds like a lot. It's a lot of chocolate, but once again, I am here for it. For the chocolate raspberry croissant, we are first going to open up our croissants and add that layer of simple syrup. Next up is a layer of raspberry jam. I was running a bit low on my raspberry jam here, that's why things look a bit scarce. And of course, this wouldn't be a chocolate raspberry croissant without some chocolate chunks. You'll go ahead and sandwich the croissants and then bake them off in the oven. And for this outer coating, I am using some semi-sweet chocolate chips, adding a bit of coconut oil, melting that in the microwave, and then adding a nice layer of that chocolate over all those croissants. I was also thinking of different ways to fold in raspberry into this recipe and ended up using freeze-dried raspberries that I bought at my local Trader Joe's. I put the freeze-dried raspberries into my food processor until I had a nice fine powder, and then I used a sieve and just sprinkled that all over my croissants. It really gave the croissants a bright pop of pink and added a bit of tartness as well. Aside from the chocolate being a little messy, these turned out way better than I expected. And that is how you put together a twice-baked chocolate raspberry croissant. All right, let's try the chocolate raspberry. This one tastes more like a pain au chocolat or just a chocolate croissant because I didn't have that much raspberry jam in there. But if you add a little bit more raspberry jam, I think the chocolate and the raspberry flavors will balance out better. I just love chocolate, so I don't mind this being chocolate dominant, but if you wanted more of that tartness to cut through, would recommend adding more raspberry jam and maybe even a touch more freeze-dried raspberry on the top. But I really love how this croissant turned out. I think it's especially unique. I've never seen a chocolate raspberry croissant at my local bakery before. Moving on to the creme brulee croissant, obviously inspired by my love of creme brulee. Like, who doesn't love creme brulee? It's literally the perfect matrimony of cream, custard, brown sugar, caramelized goodness, literally everything in one beautiful dessert. This croissant is filled with a vanilla pastry cream. It's topped with a little zhuzh, I don't know if there's a better word, but zhuzh of pastry cream on top, and then sprinkled with some sugar. And then I took my blowtorch and I crispified the top. Okay, so the creme brulee croissants start out a little bit different from all the other recipes. First, you will want to pop the croissants straight into the oven without slicing them in the middle. Then you'll score the bottom of each croissant with a knife and then fill it up with pastry cream. When you fill it up with the pastry cream, you will know it's full because it'll be bursting at the seams. And I wanted to use my pastry cream even more, so I added a thin layer on top of each croissant. I sprinkled on some white sugar and I torched it. I recently got this blowtorch on Amazon, and honestly, I wish I had gotten it sooner because I am addicted to torching anything. And as you can see, the inside of this croissant is fully loaded. Creme brulee. I mean, this filling says it all. Cheers. So much filling. I kind of walked into that one. The pastry cream, when I bit into that creme brulee croissant, truly exploded on me. But you know, you gotta stuff it. Like, I hate going to a bakery where the croissants are like partially stuffed, or any sort of like cream puff is only halfway filled. Like, that is the most unsatisfying thing. So it's better to have it overstuffed, in my humble opinion. If you love pastry cream, if you love that creamy vanilla flavor, that is the way to go. I think it's a little bit on the sweeter side, so you have to prepare yourself for that. And if anything, you can actually just fill it up with pastry cream, and you don't necessarily need to put the pastry cream on top and torch it. Last but not least is the lemon meringue, because who doesn't love lemon meringue pie? That is what this croissant is inspired off of. So for this lemon meringue croissant, we've got actually frangipane as well as lemon curd inside of the croissant. And then we're topping it off with some meringue that's been torched. I also think this is probably the prettiest croissant of the bunch. It's just elegant and just screams like, well, you know what it screams? It screams very demure, very mindful. Last but not least, let's get into the recipe for the lemon meringue croissant. I'm starting off this recipe much like the others by adding a thin layer of frangipane to each croissant. Then comes some lemon curd. You could make your own, but I just bought this one from Trader Joe's, and I spread a layer of that on top of the frangipane. And after that, you'll want to go ahead and sandwich your croissants and toss them in the oven. And while these bad boys are baking in the oven, we will actually move on to preparing the meringue. I will say you don't want to start this process too early because the meringue will deflate, so make sure you make the meringue right before you're about to use it. You'll know the meringue is done when you start getting some soft to medium firm peaks. And the mixture should be nice and glossy. You'll want to load that up into a piping bag, and then we'll pipe that all over the croissants once they've cooled down. And the very last thing after you finish piping on the meringue on top of each of your croissants is to bring back that torch and torch each of the meringue parts until they kind of resemble a toasted marshmallow. And that is it. That is how you make this lemon meringue twice-baked croissant. Let's do the lemon meringue taste test. I'm so excited to try that meringue on top. It's beautifully torched. This one tastes like if sunshine were bottled up into a croissant. Really weird analogy, I know. It's like the perfect summertime croissant because it's so refreshing. It's got a nice tart lemon curd that kind of cuts through, and then the meringue on top is nice and toasted, a little bit kind of like a s'mores marshmallow vibe, and all together it just pairs so nicely. Honestly, this might be my favorite thus far. I love how bright and citrusy it is, and it's not too sweet as well. Now that I've tried every single croissant, I have to say my favorites are the chocolate raspberry as well as the lemon meringue croissant. Those are just two super unique flavors. I think they're both very different. If you're looking for something a bit heavier, the chocolate raspberry is a little bit more indulgent, but if you're looking for something more bright, citrusy, and refreshing, I definitely go for the lemon meringue. Those are my top two, but honestly, all of these croissants are absolutely delicious, and I highly recommend you give them a try to do something a little bit more fun and creative with your Costco croissants. So you've made it to the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. If you guys want to see the full recipes for every single croissant here, definitely head to my Patreon for the full breakdown and recipe guidelines. And don't forget to leave a comment if you have your own recommendations for a different recipe or a variation of this recipe hack that you think I should try. I'm also thinking about doing an Asian-inspired croissant hack video next, one with more like ube, black sesame, maybe even red bean flavors. And so I would love your feedback and opinion on that. So let me know in the comments if that's something you would like to see. Thanks again for sticking around to the end, and I'll see you next time. Bye!